In 1994, an archaeologist walked across a dusty hilltop in southeastern Turkey. The land had been farmed for generations. Locals had been dragging broken stones from their fields for decades, tossing them aside without a second glance. To anyone passing through, it was nothing. Just another hill in a region full of hills. But the archaeologist, a man named Klaus Schmidt, noticed something that everyone else had missed. The stones weren't random. They had shapes, edges, markings that had been carved by human hands. The hill wasn't a hill at all. It was a burial mound. And what had been buried beneath it was not a tomb. It was a temple. When Schmidt began excavating, he uncovered something that would force archaeologists to rewrite the timeline of human civilization. Beneath the dirt and the centuries lay massive stone pillars, some standing nearly 18 feet tall, weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in perfect circles, carved with images of animals that hadn't walked the earth in thousands of years. The first carbon dating results came back. They were checked, then checked again. The numbers didn't just challenge the existing timeline, they shattered it. The temple was nearly 12,000 years old. This is the story of Gobekli Tepe, the oldest temple ever discovered, a structure built before agriculture, before pottery, before written language, by people who weren't supposed to be capable of building anything at all. And someone buried it on purpose. To understand why Gobekli Tepe is so disturbing to conventional history, it's important to understand what archaeologists believed about the origins of civilization. The standard model was simple. Humans lived as hunter-gatherers. Then, slowly, they learned to farm. Agriculture allowed permanent settlements. Settlements grew into villages, then cities. And somewhere along the way, after all of this, they built temples. Religion, it was assumed, came after civilization, a product of settled life, not a cause of it. Gobekli Tepe broke that model completely. The temple was built around 9600 BCE. Agriculture wouldn't begin for another 1,000 years. The wheel hadn't been invented. Metal tools didn't exist. Writing wouldn't appear for another 6,000 years. And yet, here were hundreds of massive stone pillars, shaped, transported, and erected with astonishing precision, organized into circular formations that suggest not just construction, but planning, vision, purpose. The central pillars are the most striking. Each one is T-shaped, a stylized human form. Some have arms and hands carved in shallow relief along their sides. They face each other across the center of each circle, as if standing in eternal conversation, or eternal vigil. Moving stones of this size required coordination, dozens of workers, sustained effort over months, possibly years, which means someone had to feed them. Hunter-gatherers don't build monuments, they move with the food. So how did a society without farming sustain the labor needed to build a temple of this scale? This is where things become truly strange. Klaus Schmidt proposed a radical theory. What if religion came first? What if the desire to build a sacred space, a place of worship, of gathering, of connection to something greater, was the catalyst that brought people together? What if the temple didn't come after civilization? What if it came before it? What if Gobekli Tepe was the reason humans learned to farm? If Schmidt was right, then everything we thought we knew about the birth of civilization was backwards. The temple didn't emerge from civilization. Civilization emerged from the temple. But the pillars themselves tell only part of the story. The carvings are where the mystery deepens. The animals carved into the pillars at Gobekli Tepe are not decorative. They are specific, deliberate. Foxes, snakes, boars, vultures, spiders, scorpions, creatures that appear again and again across different enclosures as though they were part of a shared symbolic language, a vocabulary of the sacred that we can no longer read. Some pillars feature abstract symbols, circles, crescents, horizontal lines, H-shaped marks. These are not random. They repeat. They appear in consistent combinations. They carry meaning that was obvious to the people who carved them and utterly opaque to the people who study them today. What were they saying? The vultures are perhaps the most haunting. In several ancient cultures, vultures were associated with death rituals, the practice of excarnation, where the dead were exposed to the sky, their flesh consumed by birds before the bones were buried. The carvings at Gobekli Tepe may depict a death cult, a place where the dead were offered to the sky. One of the most overlooked aspects of the mystery is what isn't there. There are no carvings of domesticated animals, no depictions of farming, no images of daily life. Everything carved at Gobekli Tepe is wild. Predators, scavengers, venomous creatures. The world depicted in stone is not a world of settlement and comfort. It is a world of danger, death, and the sacred. Were these animals totems, guardians? Were they meant to protect the temple or to warn the living away? But the greatest mystery of Gobekli Tepe is not what was built, it is what was buried. Around 8000 BCE, after standing for nearly 2,000 years, Gobekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Not abandoned, not destroyed, buried. Someone made the decision to cover the entire site. Every pillar, every enclosure, every carved stone, under thousands of tons of earth and debris. This was not a natural process. It was not erosion. It was not a landslide. The burial was methodical, controlled. The fill material was a mix of soil, stone chips, animal bones, and tools, carefully deposited in layers as though the site was being given a funeral. Why? Before jumping to conclusions, it's important to consider the possibilities. Perhaps the temple had outlived its purpose. Perhaps a changing climate forced the people to move, and they buried their sacred site to protect it, to preserve it for a return that never came. Perhaps the burial was itself a ritual act, a final ceremony, a closing of the door between the human world and whatever the temple connected them to. Or perhaps something happened at Gobekli Tepe that made the people who built it decide it should never be opened again. The mystery grows deeper when we ask a simple question. If the temple was meant to be preserved, why bury it so completely that no trace of it survived in living memory? By the time Klaus Schmidt arrived, the hill had been farmed for generations. No one remembered what was beneath it. No oral tradition, no legend, no myth of the great temple under the hill. Whatever the reason, the burial preserved Gobekli Tepe with extraordinary effectiveness. The site survived intact for 10,000 years, protected by the very act meant to conceal it. The people who buried it may have intended to hide it forever. Instead, they gave it to the future. Only a fraction of Gobekli Tepe has been excavated. Klaus Schmidt, who dedicated his life to the site, estimated that what has been uncovered represents perhaps 5% of what lies beneath the hill. The rest, over 200 additional enclosures, remains buried, 5%. And it already rewrote history. What is waiting in the other 95%? More carvings? More enclosures? Something we haven't imagined yet? The mystery of Gobekli Tepe is not just about what was found. It is about what it represents. A 12,000-year-old temple, built by people who supposedly couldn't build temples. Covered in symbols we can't read. Buried by people who chose to hide it rather than leave it open. And still largely unexplored, waiting beneath a hilltop in Turkey. Some researchers believe Gobekli Tepe is connected to a broader pattern. A global wave of monumental construction that appears in the archaeological record around the same period. Temples, megaliths, and carved sites scattered across the ancient world, built within a narrow window of time. As though something awakened in human consciousness 12,000 years ago. A shared impulse to build, to carve, to reach towards something beyond the visible world. Could all of these be connected? Or are we simply seeing patterns where none exist? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what was found beneath that hilltop. Perhaps it's what remains undiscovered, what is still buried, what is still silent, waiting. Because every mystery has a story. This is Tales Unknown. If you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe to Tales Unknown and join us as we uncover history's greatest mysteries, lost civilizations, forbidden knowledge, and unexplained events. Until next time, stay curious, stay unknown. This is Tales Unknown.